Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching the Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences. We'll get on with the show in just a minute, but first a quick word from my sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So it's time for another roundup of games that I've played recently, and I'll be doing another video sort of akin to this one, which will basically do a 6-month review of the year so far for 2023. But for now, this is all about games I've played in June. Now, I've played a lot of games in June, partially because of the UK Games Expo, because that's the time when I get to play a lot of games. But I've also been playing a fair few games online. Board Game Arena has had a bit of a resurgence for me with some people, and yeah, it's just been quite a plentiful month for games. Now, I'm not going to talk about games that I've played which I've reviewed or going to review, because that kind of defeats the purpose, and I'll spend less time talking about ones that I've talked about on other episodes so that I can talk about something a little bit different. But first up, we'll mention Inventions from Vital Lacerda. This is a game that I talked about on a recent podcast episode. I believe I talked about it on the UK Games Expo review episode, so by all means check that one out for more detail. This is obviously getting a lot of buzz. It's Vital Lacerda and it's Ian O'Toole, and obviously anything made by that pairing is going to get a lot of hype amongst Eurogamers. Sadly, this one just ended up being a bit of a disappointment for me. I played it with people I like in the industry, you know, people I get on well with, and we had a good fun time, but the game itself is just a bit lackluster. The theme of Inventions doesn't come through really at all. It's the same kind of mechanics we've seen before. There's nothing really new or innovative here. Even the whole idea of chaining bonuses and having, you know, extra actions and that doesn't tend to come into play as often as you would like, at least compared to some other games where you get to do that kind of thing a bit more often, shall we say. I think games like the Gallerist did it a little bit better. But yeah, it looks fairly bland on the table. I mean, yeah, it's got Ian O'Toole's artwork, but it's not particularly vibrant or colourful. You've got really dry, stale mechanics, like you get these little hexagons when you do the card actions, and then with these hexagons you put them on your little grid, and for the most part it makes no difference where they go unless you have another tile that says score points if you get 3 of this type in a line. It's really arbitrary and dry. Like, where's the theme gone from this? You had stuff like Kanban and the Gallerist and Vinyos that really paid homage to the theme that they were talking about. And now recently with things like Weather Machine, which I admit, yeah, okay, fine, it has a theme, quote unquote, but only if you're in that specific sort of market. But even then, that's not really dripping with it. But this one just feels bone dry, and for a Vital Lacerda game to be bone dry, it's somewhat off-putting. But it's not just the lack of the theme, you know, the mechanics as well just felt kind of bare, you know, just nothing really there to grip me onto. You asked me, what is the USP of this game? What is it about the Gallerist that's unique? What is it about Kanban that's unique? Ask me what Inventions is unique for. I cannot think of a single thing that it is. It's just another Lacerda, which will mean it's a fine enough game to play, but I don't see why it would go on anybody's shelf over the other Lacerda titles. I give a lot more detail in my podcast episode, but yeah, for me, this one was kind of like a 5 or a 6 after I played it. I found it average, above average at best. It's just not one that I think people should be getting that excited over.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
So why don't we just continue that hate train with another little card game that I finally got to play in the open gaming section. This is not a brand new game. This is one that's been out for a little while. It's got cutesy nature pictures of trees on it, and I've heard mixed opinions on it. Some people like it, some people don't. But I wanted to give this one a try, and that is Arboretum. It's a small card game where you have a deck of cards in the middle, and you're drawing a hand of these trees, and you're playing them out in front of you in whatever pattern you sort of feel like. But the idea is that you're trying to create paths between the same type of tree, and it's got to go in ascending number order, and the longer you can make the path, the more points you get. But there's a bit of a take that thing in here, where people can obviously take trees that you want, or not drop trees out of the hand that you want. But then at the end of the game, there's this really weird, confusing system where if you have trees, like card trees in your hand, with numbers higher than what somebody else has in their hand, they don't score for that particular color of tree. It's really weird, and I just found that really punishing and horrible, because you play the whole game going, oh, I've got these trees and I've got these paths, and luck, it's luck. I mean, it is luck of the draw, what you get, so it's not like I can plan ahead for it. I have to just hope I get what's right in the hand, and hope that when I end the game I have something higher than one of 3 other players at the table. But you get to the end, and all this stuff that you've been doing just suddenly becomes scorched earth, while like nothing scores apart from 1 or 2 lucky people, and then they win by that means. It dragged on. I thought this game was meant to end like 20 minutes ago, and it didn't. It's not quick enough to be a filler. It just kind of didn't feel that exciting. It's got pretty pictures, but then you get to the end and it just feels like everything you do was a waste of time. I really didn't like this. Inventions I could play again. This one I don't want to play again. I actively thought that this was a bad game, and I did not like my play of it. I can see why it's got a divisive opinion on it, and I know it's got its fans, but for me, not a fan, not playing this one again.
Prepare to die.
Alright, now let's flip it on its head and talk about games that are a bit better. And this is probably going to shock a few people, because there's 2 on my shelf at the moment that I could give some props to, although it might annoy some of you in other respects. So this one first, which I've got partially because I'm doing a top 10 roll and writes game soon, top 10 list. Well, I say roll and write, flip and write, X and write, whatever, something and write. I am going to do that top 10 soon, especially once I caught up with all these reviews I'm doing. I will start doing some more top 10 list, people, I promise. But roll and writes I wanted to try out more of, and so most people I know didn't have these, and I couldn't get them as review copies, so I figured, you know what, the Patreons want me to do this list, so I decided to grab these out of my own pocket. And I grabbed a few just to try them out. This is Dinosaur Island, Rawr, and Write. And this one is basically the roll and write version for Dinosaur Island. There was always a Dinosaur World, which was kind of a spin-off. I've never played that one. I've heard mixed opinions, mostly bad, so I haven't really tried that. But this one is meant to be more akin to that one compared to Dinosaur Island. And the idea with this one is, for the bucks, it's a bit big for what it is. I mean, you've got your sheets here, and then that's all that's in the box. This is somewhat over packaged size-wise for what you get in here, just to fit a few pads. But you still get the cool amber dice. I love these things. I love cool, funky dice, and these are just glorious. One of the best components in Dinosaur Island, and I get them in a roll and write. But the idea with this is that you essentially have 2 sheets. You've got one sheet which is your park and various like buildings that you can grab and the DNAs and the types of dinosaurs you can get. And the other one is your park, which runs in a kind of phase sequence. So you start off with the attractions, then the specialists, then your excitement level, and then the death toll, as they call it, for, oh dear, my security was a little lackluster, never mind. But the idea with this roll and write is I've only played it solo. So I have not played this multiplayer, although to be honest, there's not a lot of difference between the solo and the multiplayer version, frankly. But the idea is that you roll the dice, you draft them in order to get the resources on them, and then you put them on these little action spaces to make DNA, make dinosaurs and all the like. And you then draw them on your grid in order to space them in your park, but you also want to connect them up with roads because you can give little tours for more excitement points. But other than that, it kind of plays very much like Dinosaur Island and World. You get the dinos, they up your excitement level, which gets you more bonuses, but then if you up the excitement too high, that's probably because you're getting carnivores and T-Rexes and stuff, which ups the threat, but then you've got to deal with that by getting some security. You have unique buildings you can build, you have unique specialists you can hire. Free are dealt out in the start of each game, there's free basics, but then you always have free unique buildings and specialists, and it's great that they just change up the game. In the solo mode, all that happens is that basically you flip over a couple of cards and the AI just nicks certain dice from the row that you've just rolled and puts them on certain spaces to block you. But you can go on those spaces, but you have to add to your threat every time you do. It's pretty straightforward, even though there is quite a lot of rules in this game. There's a lot of things that trigger, there's a lot of things that key off other things, and so it will take you a while on your first game to get used to this. There's certainly a lot of rules in here for a roll and write. But I enjoyed this. This is a solid game. One I would actually consider playing multiplayer. Maybe not with the full count of players, but there is a reason to have other people blocking your spaces, and obviously, you know, do you want to jump on other players? But even then, the game itself is just good fun. To the point where, oh my god, Dinosaur Island's not sitting on that shelf anymore. It's because it's downstairs. I'm contemplating culling it.
Dear sweet little foot.
Oh, come on! Because I haven't played Dinosaur Island in ages. It's a big game, 2 boxes, ton of stuff in it, and I just haven't brought it out to the table because of all that bloat in it. But then on top of that, there were 1 or 2 things that have irked me over the years, one of which being that hooligan bag. I still think that mechanic's dumb. As much as I love the game, that is a stupid mechanic. The idea that you draw the guests out, and if you get the purple ones, they don't pay and clog up space, but it's entirely random when that happens. So that just seems like really weird to put in a 2 to 3 hour Euro game. This one doesn't have that mechanic. But the feel of it, getting the dinosaurs, playing them in your park, getting attractions, excitement level, death toll, and all that, even the cool amber dice, all of that's in this game. So why do I need Dinosaur Island? It just feels like this completely does 90% of the same game, and Dinosaur Island's almost a bit redundant at this point. I can get this to the table a lot quicker than I can get the island one out, and so I'm really contemplating culling it. This could be a keeper in my collection. You know, this one just, it's one of the more meaty roll and writes, but not stupidly meaty. It's not going quite as far as something like Hadrian's Wall, or I suppose Twilight Inscription for that matter. This one kind of seems a little bit like the bar below that, but it's still got a decent amount in it, and yeah, it just replicates so much of the originals that I don't see why you would want the originals over this, other than just to have some plastic pieces and chunky metal coins. I can live without that. I'd rather have the cool gameplay factor. And of course I can't exactly say no to the amber dice. So yeah, I've enjoyed my plays of this one. Where will it rank on my top 10? You'll have to see, but yeah, spoiler alert, it will be on there.
I don't think any of us expected him to say that.
On the same note, Explore and Draw. This is another one that I grabbed purely to test it out and see if it would go on that top 10. Explore and Draw is the Isle of Cats version. Now, one thing that I do roll my eyes with in these Kickstarters is when the publishers say, oh yeah, we're bringing out this expansion to the game that you've played. Oh, by the way, here's our roll and write version because we just want to milk this franchise for everything that it's worth, and we know that everybody likes roll and writes all of a sudden. It does seem that way. It's starting to get a little annoying. Although Roar and Write kind of replaces the big games, this one pretty much does that with spades on it. I mean, this one, Explore and Draw, both have got dumb titles. I hate these play on words like Explore and Draw and Roar and Write. This is rubbish. But, you know, this one is basically Isle of Cats 95%. It really is. With this one, you essentially have the same premise. You are trying to get cats onto your ship, and they come in Tetris sizes. You have lesson cards, but you have a cool dry erase sheet to just tick them off when you grab them. You have the pens of the different colours of cats. You have the cards with the cats on them, and you have the lesson cards that you can grab as well. You even got the same solo mode that you had in the big version, which was that you flipped over these cards to see how many points the AI got. Same thing in here. And in fact, I swear it's like 100% the same solo mode practically. You know, and it's a great solo mode. But with this, you have a couple of special abilities that you can use. But the main difference here, other than cosmetics, is that in the normal game you were drafting, I think. You were drafting the cards, but you also had a bit more of a turn angst of, oh, don't take that tile before I grab it. Here you don't have that. The cards are laid out in a column grid, and you have to decide which, which column you have to grab, and you have to use all the cards in it, but you have a couple of special ways to tweak that during the game. So there's no turn angst because you're not blocking other players from doing anything. So this one doesn't really have any multiplayer interaction at all, and unlike Roar and Write, where you actually can potentially block people or get in their way, here you can't. So there's not much incentive for me to play this multiplayer other than the fact that it is a relatively straightforward game. But it's 95% Isle of Cats. Isle of Cats is also on the coal pile now. You know, Isle of Cats was a great game, and I love those pieces, and it looks cool. But it's a box art this big, plus the other box for the boat expansion on top, which I've sold. I've sold the boat expansion already, but I've still got kittens and beasts in there. But you've still got this massive box with bags, a folded space insert, and all these pieces, all these cards I've got to shuffle, all these other things I've got to dish out. It's a beast to set up, no pun intended. It takes a while to play, especially if you're dumb enough to play this with 5 or 6 players. Jesus! I saw friends of mine at HandyCon play Isle of Cat 6-player. They took longer to play that than I took to play 3 games of Azul, Splendor, and something else. I can't remember. But basically, I managed to play all of those games before they finished 1 game of Isle of Cat, and they hadn't even finished by the time I was done. It took forever, and they thought it was hell. It is. Don't play it with a lot of players. But really, the only difference between these 2 games is the cosmetics. Do you want the tiles? Do you want to pull those tiles out the bag? Yay or nay? Because that's literally it. Everything else you do here, trying to put the cats in a certain sequence, covering up the rooms, covering up the cats, getting the lesson tiles, getting families of cats, the solo mode, everything is identical. So why on earth would I want to keep the original one other than I want the big funky tiles? Because there's no other reason. This is much smaller to store, much easier to bring out, and because I mainly play this solo anyway, this is an easy solo game for me to do. It's a solid roll and write, and honestly, it's pretty much killed its big brother. So, as much as I've harped on roll and writes recently, these 2 have shocked me as to how much they are, doing a good job of not only being half-decent games in themselves, but also just really killing off their big brethren. Sometimes, maybe my tastes are changing, who knows? Maybe I'm starting to appreciate this genre more. Not so much. It was still quite hot. It was still quite tough to come up with a top 10. I've got the list pretty much ready, but yeah, there are a lot of roll and writes out there that I couldn't give a monkeys about. So maybe not quite that resurgence, but maybe these 2 were just 2 that I found in a lull that just happened to be pretty solid for me. So yeah, explore and draw. It's a sweet game.
This calls for a celebration.
Next one on the list is Beast. Beast I have mentioned briefly on the podcast episode, so I won't go into too much detail, but this is a Kickstarter fulfillment that is basically supposed to be hidden movement 1v all. One person plays this beast that's hunting around humans and stuff, and the other ones are the hunters trying to grab it. So I went into this thinking, oh right, is this going to be another like Fury of Dracula, Letters from Whitechapel, that kind of thing, or even Sniper Elite? It's anything but. In fact, to call this a hidden movement game is kind of a bit misleading, because you don't really stay hidden for most of the game. It's so easy for the hunters to find you, and most of the time you're just blipping in and out of existence, in a sense. Like, oh, you found me, I'm here, here, here. Ah, for 1 turn, I'm hidden, you don't know where. Oh, you found me, never mind. It's like, right, I'm hidden, I'm free again. Oh, I'm hidden. Oh, I'm free again. Oh, I'm hidden. It's like, it's just constantly in and out. So this isn't really a stealth game. This is just more of a, a card drafting game. You draft the action cards that you all use, and I like this mechanic. This where you draft them along with the other, like, both teams are drafting with each other, and they've got the abilities for both players and the beast. So you're drafting hoping to not give the players a good card if you're the beast, but then they're also trying not to give the beast really powerful cards as well. That system is cool, but this game has a lot of other problems. Firstly, it's quite a beast to set up. There's quite a lot going on. Secondly, there's a micro economy in here where you got to play red and blue cards if you want to play 2 in a turn. But it's mostly luck of the draft as to whether you have the cards to be able to do that, and it's also just one complication that the game didn't need. This game could use a bit of streamlining in places, and this is one element that I just think, why bother? Why don't you just say you can play up to 2 cards? Because it's not always good to play 2 cards. You might want to just play 1, but why have that unnecessary restriction on it? It just doesn't seem necessary. On top of that though, there's an economy for leveling up your upgrades, and the players particularly, if they don't get a lot of their upgrade points or whatever it is, I forget what the currency is, then some of the players there are sitting the entire game with no upgrades, and they feel like useless characters. And some characters are way more powerful than others. I'm sorry, the balance in this game is not good. You've got a couple of characters that are great if they're going one-on-one with a beast. Doesn't tend to happen much. But then you've got characters like the Seer. The Seer, especially when upgraded, is downright broken. This character, when upgraded, pretty much guaranteed you will never be hidden again in the game, because it's so easy for them to figure out where you are, or at least boil it down to a 50-50 guess. It's just not really well balanced in that regard. The game just kind of clunked along. The rulebook's not very good. The rulebook's very hard to reference things, and the teach was not great either. I just kind of burnt on this one. Well, not burnt, I just rebounded off it. And I was playing the beast. I was playing the character that I should be enjoying more, and I was getting into that theme. The theme's strong-ish, but yeah, maybe I need to play it a couple more times, I don't know, but the game took a while, it was not a short game, and I just found it to be clunky, not streamlined, and just have a few things that I know are going to irk me, but also irk other players. I mean, I wasn't the only one who didn't like it. Somebody else there didn't like it either because they just weren't getting any upgrades or anything cool to do. They were just kind of running around with the rest of the pack, and how's that fun? That doesn't feel fun. So this one kind of has the hallmarks of a typical Kickstarter by a new publisher. It's, got a cool premise, it's going to appeal to a few people, but it's got too many things that needed streamlining, more time on the ironing board, more time to develop the game rather than just bringing it out. So this one was a bit of a miss for me, I'm afraid.
Dracarys.
And then finally, I just want to talk, on a positive note actually, about Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium is a game I reviewed a couple of years ago, I think, and at first I gave it an 8 out of 10. I said it was a great game, and at the time it was, but I still had some issues with it. This is one of the reviews that I think I was wronged about, because I think I should have given it a 7, because those irks that I had were certainly big irks, and as I played it more, those kinks in the armor started grating more and more. I didn't like the fact that the deck building element felt like it was the tacked on bit compared to the worker placement, because you don't really feel like you're building a deck. You're adding cards to it, but it doesn't shuffle that often. There's no easy way to trash cards in the base game, apart from one action space, which is not easy to go to, and it just didn't feel like, that bit was annoying, but then it looks horrible, the aesthetics are bland and boring, much like the movie. Oh yeah, no, that's going to trigger some people. But there were some problems I had with it, despite enjoying the tight victory point thing, the fact that it was quite a tight game, it was a race to 10 points, there was a good amount of variety in the characters and some of the cards, although there was a lot of cards that were just absolute garbage and you couldn't refresh the display, it was like, there. So I should have really given that a 7 rather than an 8. By the time it came to the expansions being released, I'd rated it about a 6. Said it was above average, not one that I would give a seal of endorsement to, and I felt it was overrated beyond all get out. And I still think it's overrated like crazy. It should not be in the top 10 of BGG. No way. I feel like it's just Dune fandom at this point. But I have played it more recently. I played it a couple of times this month because players had the expansions, and I said, I will give you one more chance, Dune. I will give you another chance to wow me back with the expansions, both of them at the same time. And I thought, I will try it. And I've played it twice now, with both expansions included, and the game is an improvement. It's an improvement to the point where I would give it a 7 out of 10. But a 7 out of 10 I think is probably as high as I would go. I'm tempted by an 8, but I think 7 is still as high. It still gets a seal of endorsement from me though, but I still think it's overrated. But I do think the expansions are a benefit here, because more so the second expansion. The second expansion gives you this like arbitrary leveling thing on a science grid or whatever. You get further along the track and then you get to move along a scarab track, whatever that means, and it gets you points and stuff. I mean, it's arbitrary tracks. Who cares? Tracks are boring. But what it does give you is another set of cards to play from. So you've got these like, I forget what they're called, I just call them science cards, but I think they call them like Talaxiu cards or something, but I can't even pronounce it right, so screw it. But these other cards are like another set of cards you can buy for your deck, and they've got new abilities, some of them are powerful, some of them are crap, but just like the other ones. But it's cool that you use the currency to buy them as like people that you put on that board. And also I like the grafting mechanic, where you play like 2 cards at once, and some of the graft abilities give you benefits if you graft it with certain things. That mechanic I like, and in the expansion, I think that's cool. They also, I don't know if it was the first or second expansion, it gives you a way to reshuffle the display of cards. Sadly only once each though, which is a bit weird. You should be able to do it more often than that, because that display can still get clogged up with rubbish. And if you've got rubbish cards there, there's no incentive to buy them because you're just bulking up your deck. But, at least it's something. But I did notice that there was more ways to trash cards with these new additions. The cards that have been added over these expansions do introduce more ways to either draw cards or trash ones from your deck. and that's a good thing. I mean, the first one I played was with this Lord character who actually had an ability to trash cards out of his deck by playing his ring ability or whatever, or something like that. I forget his name, a Duke something. But he was really cool, and I actually enjoyed that game more than any other Dune game because I felt like I was doing more with the deck building part of it. Worker placement is worker placement. It's fine. It's whatever. It does what it says. Even though, again, this is another problem I have with the game, the fact that the worker placement is dictated by the cards you draw, the random luck factor for a game that takes over 2 hours to play is quite high in this. Like, I want to go do these spots here, but I can't because the cards I drew happen to say I can only go to the green and yellow. Well, woe is me. You get all the stuff. This game has a high luck factor, people. You gotta admit that. But, you know, with that said, the first expansion, Dreadnoughts, whatever, it's another way to use money. The combat is still, you know, quite a prevalent thing in the game, although I'm pleased to report that with the expansions, it's no longer the be-all or end-all that it used to be in the base game. I actually have won the game doing no combat whatsoever. Like, I might have joined in one combat, not won it, and then I just said, you know what, I'm a pacifist the whole game and not doing any of the combat. And I still obliterated the other players because I found an engine that allowed me to get me a ton of Solari money, and I was using that on a card in my deck as well as other opportunities to buy victory points while also getting up with the alliances on the other factions. This enabled me to win the game pretty convincingly while the others were duking it out in the combat zone. And great, it was about time that you could actually win without doing combat in this game. So with all that said and done, the game has improved to me to be a 7. Not enough for me to make it a game I'd want to own. And let's face it, why do I need to own it? Pretty much everybody I know has got the frigging game. Hell, it gets played every single week at my Portsmouth club without fail. You know, I swear they're just as obsessed with that as they are with Blood and the Clock Tower. Although, if I was going to pick one to burn and one for them to keep Dune Imperium, because then at least I can play that and enjoy it. Burn Blood and the Clock Tower, please. That is so annoying now. But the game itself, I'm enjoying. I thought, like, you know what? You've done it. You've put out 2 expansions, which don't fix every problem I have with Dune Imperium, but it is a significant improvement, enough for me to say, you know what? I can recommend this game, just not for the top 10 of BGG, okay? Yeah, it's still overrated, but I can say that I enjoy it, and if people want to play it and it's one of the choices on the table, I'll be like, cool. If everybody knows what they're doing. This game drags on way too long if you have a new player or anybody who's not quick at their turns. We had that on the other session where I enjoyed the game, but man, the one slow player we had was grating me. You know, literally pretty much had to handhold them the entire game, and it's like, seriously, why did you jump into this game if you're like Takinoko's the best thing you can handle? It's like, it really was dragging on to the point where I swear the game took an extra hour over what it should have done because of it.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
So that's it for me on this episode of the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and let me know in the comments what you think about these games. Good, bad comments, things you disagree with, things you agree with. Let's be civil and talk about these in more detail. Of course, don't forget to check out more content on the channel, including all the smorgasbord of reviews I've been doing since the Board Game Expo. Love to get some more views for those, so please check them out, thumb them up, check them out on Board Game Geek, thumb them up there as well. I appreciate all the attention and engagement. Until next time, remember, regardless of whether you consider it to be overrated or not, it's still only a game. Bye for now.